Hi everybody, Richard Troman's here again, Artificial Lawyer TV. Today we're doing a bit of a special in-depth interview with Deloitte, and with us is Mark Ross and Craig Conte, who some of you will know are very much connected to Deloitte's contract work. Hi both, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having us, Richard.
Glad to be here.
Pleasure. Well, let's just introduce you because I know you've both got slightly different job roles in relation to all of this, and then we can dig into more broadly what Deloitte is doing. Mark, would you go first?
Sure. Again, thanks for having us both today, Richard. Mark Ross, based in Los Angeles, principal in Deloitte's legal business services practice here in the US, with a particular focus on legal managed services and contract lifecycle management specifically. I've been in the and I use this term in quotations, alternative legal services market really since its nascent early days, and thrilled to be with you today representing Deloitte.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Craig.
Sure. Happy to be here because he's British and living in US. I'm American living in London. So I'm a partner in Deloitte Legal here, running the legal management consulting services, focusing primarily on contracts and contract enablement. I'm a lawyer by training from New Jersey. You can hold that from me. You can hold that against me if you like, but I've been spending a lot of time, basically 20-something years in contracts and contract management. And really the last, probably 10, 15 years, mostly focused on helping companies get from, sort of standard way of how they do a contracting methodology to then how do you get that, optimized? How do you get that, do that better yourself? How do you tech enablement? And then how do you either outsource that, insource that, or do otherwise? So Mark and I oftentimes work hand in hand across the globe, either setting things up, putting them together as we try to help people do things better.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm just going to come off the screen so people can focus on you two, and I'm just going to ask you some questions about all of this. So let's start off with some basic stuff. Deloitte obviously has many aspects to what it does in terms of helping clients with contracts, but just very simply, could you just break it down? What are the key things that Deloitte is helping clients with in relation to contracts?
You want me to take this one, Craig?
Yeah, you go, Mark.
We look at the life cycle of contracts as they flow through an organization, from requesting, intake, creation, negotiation, approvals, signature, archiving, post-execution legal and obligation and commercial management. And we help organizations optimize, enable, transform every component of that life cycle. Craig, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's it. I mean, I think the other thing that's interesting about contracts is that, we have, obviously, contracts are touched by everyone, but owned by no one. So sometimes, this is a legal, we're helping a legal department. Sometimes we're helping a procurement department, a sales organization, operations, shared services. So, although we have obviously a legal twinge to us, right? Because it's contracts, it's really the whole enterprise that we end up dealing with.
Gotcha. And of course, Deloitte is going far beyond just consulting, and you're doing a whole bunch of different things, as just explained. But you're also offering, you might say, the ability to handle some of these contracting needs as well, aside from helping them through consulting.
Of course, transforming the contracting operation affords our clients the opportunity to consider the make versus buy conundrum, and outsourcing or having Deloitte operate a significant component of the internal contracting function is something that we offer to clients on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then I guess the third leg of this is the tech bit, which is, I mean, how far do you go in both sourcing and then implementing things like CLM solutions and document automation solutions for them?
That's a big chunk of what we're doing now. I mean, I think, we try to say, we're tech agnostic, but certainly tech opinionated. I mean, Mark and I, and a bunch of the team here have all been doing this for probably way too long. I think back when it was pen and paper, but CLM and all the adjunct activities that are around there, we have good relationships. We're partnering with a number of tools, but really it's about scanning the market because not every, finding the right tool that fits the situation. Like, are you looking for something that, is a bespoke automation tool to read, complicated contracts here? Is it something for the whole life cycle? Is it, is it just managing afterwards the money that goes through that connects to your ERP system? There's no one tool that just does all those things I described. So finding the right tool and really building a service around that can implement and really run that for you, we're spec select, implement and run all the way.
It's interesting that you said that even now, even with so many CLM companies, we could list a whole bunch of them. It's interesting to hear that you think that there isn't really just one that really captures the whole thing.
No, I mean, I think it's, look, it's like if you go to a restaurant, right? And, the restaurant has a menu that, shows you really, it has great Indian food, great Italian food, and sushi, right? The reality is, that's all food, correct? But they probably don't have necessarily 3 top-line Michelin star chefs to do all 3 of those. Those are 3 very different things of types of food. So I think there's tools that do everything okay. There's tools that do some things really, really well. But I think even in this market now, there's no tool that does everything perfectly. But Mark, kick me if I'm wrong.
No. What I would add to what Craig has said, Richard, is that some of the leading contract lifecycle management technologies have been around for in excess of 15 years. In fact, some of the early birds in CLM technology came into the market 20, 25 years ago. But it has been the maturation of those players, the sophistication of the functionalities on offer, but probably more than anything else, the adoption of that technology has been slow. If you're being generous, stop-start would be another way I would determine the adoption rate of that technology. And I think one of the major reasons why is that many of the building blocks that organizations need to have in place to truly empower the functionalities that these CLM technology platforms offer has simply not been put in place. There was a focus on the rigidity of templates. There was a focus on, legal having to touch everything, every single escalation. But now what we're starting to see with the build out of self-service as a process, playbooks, the build out of clause libraries, that in and of itself empowers the more effective leverage of CLM technology. And the market has reached a point, particularly with COVID, the last 18 months, where there has been a huge acceleration to digitization.
Gotcha. It's interesting. So, I mean, I think implicitly you're saying that even though the tech or some of the tech was there, the market wasn't there, really. I mean, there may have been solutions, but the market wasn't ready to use them. And sort of almost accidentally, they've now reached the point where they can implement them.
Yeah, I mean, electric cars have been around for a long time. It's just now that, where Mark lives, it's just covered in Priuses, right? So I think that's, the technology's been there. I think now an understanding, I think the maturity, of it. And look, it's not the fault of the market, right? The tools have been there, great technicians, but people start realizing, hey, wait, I can do this self-service, or I have this problem. Oh, now I get it. And look, what, 5 years ago there were no billion-dollar companies. Now there's 3, $1 billion or more, I should say, CLM tools. So that shows you that the last 5 years have been, 6 years have been amazing in this market.
Yeah, I'd add as well, Richard and Craig, that you can't overstate what I refer to as the perfect storm, and that's where we are at the moment with CLM and CLM technology specifically. You've got overlapping and interrelated forces at play, a burgeoning regulatory environment, the rise and maturation of legal operations as a discipline, the interconnectivity between legal and procurement, legal and sales, legal and finance, legal and IT, and coupled with the increased sophistication and maturity and functional improvements of the CLM providers, we would have got to where we are today in a matter of time in any event. But COVID has been this incredulous accelerator towards change, and you cannot possibly overstate the impact of that.
Interesting, interesting. And just out of interest, I mean, who is coming to you? Is it the GCs? Is it a legal ops person? Is it someone further back in the organization, like a CFO, or maybe the group head of tech, who's kind of come out of the woodwork and said to you, could you please help solve this problem? I mean, because one of the things that you hear a lot about is selling tech or trying to engage with tech projects with in-house teams is very difficult because they're so busy. They're all really super smart, really super engaged, but they're just so busy they don't have time to do these things, because to do a CLM project would take them off their work. I mean, I guess that's two-parter really. Who's coming to you, and then when you do a big project like this, how does it work if people are so busy?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, Mark, and I think this is also a maturation of legal departments too, that that they are acknowledging that they are part of the business. So I think a lot of times, I mean, I can think of like 4 projects we have going on right now. It's legal and something else, right? It's legal and procurement. It's legal and GBS, like global business services, or commercial working together. Legal's saying, this is our job is to solve business problems too, as we're part of the business, right? So like legal is now partnering with other parts of it much more effectively that I think a few years ago, that they're coming and saying, look, we have a company problem around contracting that we as legal bright lights and good brains are going to say, let's partner with some folks here in the company that have the same problem, and let's go and get some help. I mean, Mark, you probably see a little bit different maybe in US or the same.
Similar. And Richard, your question was, who comes to us? And if you think about contracts incorrectly, in my view, as exclusively a legal document, that means you answer that question through that lens. Contracts represent the lifeblood of the business, but they've got multiple stakeholders, and the life cycle can be complex. If you think about it, I try and look at it through the purpose of a contract, the purpose of that vehicle. And they serve a multitude of interests, a multitude of purposes. If you think through the stakeholders who have different interests, executives, sales, legal, procurement, finance, IT, HR, compliance, supply chain, operations, of course, and legal, the list goes on and on. And the thing is, Richard, is those stakeholders, they all have different priorities. They all view the very purpose of these vehicles, these contractual documents differently. Some of them look at contracts as a tool for risk management. Some look at contracts as a revenue generation tool. Some view contracts as a tool for risk mitigation, others for regulatory compliance. So when you ask who comes to us, I'll give you the lawyer's answer: it depends. It depends on the particular lens through which that stakeholder is viewing the contractual problem.
Gotcha. So just to clarify, so you have been brought in to, let's say, work on a CLM project, and the main point of contact wasn't anyone in the legal department?
Oh, many times.
Many
Procurement,
times.
IT, sales, and of course, legal.
Gotcha. Okay, interesting. And what are the main challenges? I mean, I picked up a couple of things which I've heard just, on the grapevine, just about, we're way too busy. This isn't actually our job. We understand this is a good thing, but we just don't have time. Another thing is around how on earth do we onboard all the old documents, starting fresh. If we were a new company, 1 day old, and we had a brand new CLM and it was empty, we could work forward from that point. That wouldn't be too tricky. But we've got 25 million historical documents. How on earth do we get these into the system? I mean, are those some of the big issues? I mean, what are the other? Well, if you comment on those, I mean, also, what are the other big issues?
Craig, do you want to take that one?
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I think you hit on a lot of those, right? Obviously, getting legacy documents in. I mean, the biggest issue, right? Well, is understanding what the problem is, right? That you're trying to solve. I think there's some companies that come at this and say, hey, I know I'm doing this wrong. I know I'm using effectively email, paper, and phones to do this, and there has to be a better way. And spoiler alert, yes, there is. but then trying to figure out, where do I start? How do I attack this? How do I even get to the right part of it? Then adoption. I mean, because I think, as Mark said, right, all those different users out there have sort of different, user experiences, right, of how they need to use it. Some of them may just need to be using a CLM as an approval mechanism. Some as a reporting mechanism. Some of it is, a tracking mechanism for, how orders are and finances are going. Others are, heavy duty, I'm actually looking at my contract compliance or how to author something. So these are all different ways to do it. And then who do I start with? How do I get people to do it? And if this is your first CLM, there's still lots of companies. This is your first CLM. It's okay, right? I promise they're good. You should, it's getting the lawyers or getting the commercial team, whatever, to go from whatever system they were doing, right? Let's call it like, file sharing system where they're pulling a template down and they're doing this through their workflow is email, to get them into a platform. It's getting them into the restaurant, getting them into there. That is a lot of times companies get sort of scared by, like, well, it's working, it's not broken. Why can't it stay as it is? Which I don't think necessarily works. But I mean, you hit all the big ones, but Mark, there's probably more problems I missed too.
Well, I also think, and we've not talked about this yet today, is the natural position we found ourselves in with organizations where probably up until the last year or so, Craig, the level of time, effort, investment, resources, infrastructure that has focused on all of the steps prior to signing a contract. And it's incredibly natural. I use that word because organizations must have contracts to enable the business. Whereas, I hate to say this, but it's nice to have effective post-signature legal and obligation management, even though the vast majority of the value that is to be derived or potentially lost through ineffective post-execution management, it comes, as I said, in the post-signature phase. So it's entirely understandable why the situation has emerged, but I do think that's a problem, and it's certainly one that you and I are trying to tackle with our clients on an ongoing basis.
I think just build on that. I think that goes into the business case. Like, people understand, like, inherently they get it, right? It's like a leap of faith. They understand, yes, this is value, but then, where I think we end up helping a lot of people is like just articulating out, what does this mean for a business case, right? Is this, we're not talking outsourcing 1990s, like, oh, I take heads out. No. The business case for CLM is much more complicated and much more of a lattice across your company in terms of the value, risk avoidance, that you have. So I think, they say, I know I need to do this. I know it's not going to be a snap and done in a minute. I want to do the investment, but how do I sort of justify this? It could be a challenge. So, I got to say, half of our projects, probably more than that, is the first part is helping companies just get to that. All right, we want to do X. What's the business case for it?
Got you. But what do you do? I mean, I'm slightly devil's advocate here, because obviously I do believe that CLM systems are useful, but just to play devil's advocate, I mean, what do you do with a senior GC or deputy, whatever, who says, look, I mean, my job is to advise a company, people beneath me, help sort out contracts, we handle risk, we handle crises. My job is not to sit and worry about post-signature sales terms, and if I don't know, some sales agreement needs to be renewed or not. I'm a senior lawyer. It's none of my business. I don't care. Someone else can do that. I mean, I presume someone probably may have said that to you at least once.
And Richard, you're correct in that it may not be, certainly at least the singular focus of the chief legal officer or the general counsel. But if you start to demonstrate the ROI to an organization by tightening up and improving their post-signature contract management processes, irrespective of what part of the organization owns those post-execution processes, think through just the wide range of post-award, post-signature issues that directly can impact commercial value, price changes, invoices, late payment penalties, service levels, discounts, auto renewals, to name, just a few. You start digging into that, you start demonstrating the real dollar of lost value, then people start to pay attention.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But does sorry to go, just interrupt. But does that mean then that the role of the GC or the in-house function is really changing? It's becoming more sort of, you might say, financially orientated, in the same way that the accounts team is, or the CFO's office, or is it that lawyers will just carry on being lawyers, which is what they're good at, and CLM and Deloitte and other consultancies basically help to extract all of that financial bureaucracy and find a better way of doing it that doesn't burden the lawyers? You see what I mean? So do the lawyers have to change to adapt, or do you say, don't worry, you just carry on doing what you're doing and we'll find a better way using tech?
Well, I think that I think this all kind of goes together, right? Like, there's an evolution right now. I think obviously 20, 30 years ago, there were bright GCs thinking this way too, but I think it's just become more and more common, right? More understand that, look, there's no separation. People always talk about, well, there's the, lawyer, non-lawyer, lawyer in the business, right? Whatever the business is. But, if you're a legal department, you're part of the business, right? I have yet to see a situation where a company goes bankrupt, but the legal department gets to keep carrying on what it's doing.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you don't understand that at the end of the day, yes, you have risk, you have all these other things going on, like there's goals for the business, whether, if you see a fire, don't just say, well, it's not my job, right? That's the fire brigade. No, you have to, you're part of this, you're part of the ecosystem. So, being more financially, have some more financial acumen, just realizing the end results, the outcomes, I think that's a good evolution. I think also the natural curiosity that lawyers have and whatnot, and more integration just gets to better results. So I see it more that, GCs, they may not necessarily have had the 20, 30 years of experience of doing this, but they understand the issue and they've issue spotted, like all good lawyers do. And now they're trying to find a solution for it. So I think that you're seeing much more of that, Richard.
Gotcha. Just another question. We're getting towards the end now. Just a couple of quick fire ones. I mean, very, very roughly, if you look at the very large companies, FTSE 100, Fortune 500 type companies, large global companies, very, very roughly, how many of them do you think are using a CLM system?
It's a great question, Richard, and there's been a number of research reports that have looked at this issue. What I can tell you in some of the research that we undertook recently, touching on 70% of those surveyed cited automation and digitization as a medium to high priority right now for them. I've seen surveys from other organizations that indicate something in the region of 55 to 60% of the Fortune 500 have a CLM technology platform. But again, I go back to the comments I made, at the beginning of our discussion, that just because an organization has a CLM technology platform in no way means that they have effective user adoption, that they're leveraging the functionality of that platform. In fact, many organizations have not tackled, as I said, the initial basic building blocks to empower the utility of the platform. They haven't undertaken effective change management. So what we're seeing actually is a number of situations where organizations, they may have procured a first generation CLM platform X number of years ago, and they have had their fingers burnt, and they're now revisiting, let's do this in a more structured, more appropriate manner. Let's get our templates, our playbooks, our process all mapped out and take another look at CLM tech. Craig?
Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly, because a lot of times it's not necessarily a technology problem. They have a process and discipline problem. Like, they may actually sometimes be over-tooled, right? But it's like if you buy your exercise equipment, everyone probably has exercise equipment, but if you're not using it, it's just there to hold up your shirt and do your laundry, right? That's what you see a lot of companies that say they check the box. Of course, I have a document management system, right? They have some place to go to the documents. They're not leaving them on the street. but they're not doing anything with it. They're not getting the information from it. They're not having people actually go into the platform and do like intelligent clause libraries. So it's, again, like, why would you buy? It's like buying, you know, an expensive exercise bike and just, you know, using it to watch cartoons, right? It's not, you know, that's what sometimes companies do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, that thereby hangs an enormous elephant in the room, which is, you know, the underuse of legal technology, or the underuse of technology in general. But just to finish off, a couple of quick ones. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I've got to ask. Presumably, Deloitte uses CLM systems. I know you're broken into different divisions and entities, but presumably you do use CLM systems yourself.
Of course.
Yeah.
We drink our own medicine.
Okay, just I'll double check that. And then just very last question. Just a couple of predictions. So obviously things are moving forwards now. That's good. There's lots of interest in CLM, huge investment, lots of companies, lots of growth. Any predictions for where the things are going to head?
You want me to go? Do you want to go, Craig?
We'll take turns. You go first. I'll see if you're right.
Well, I'm going to be something of a prognosticator here, Richard, and I think certainly one personality trait that Craig and I share is, I think we're both glasses half full optimistic in our viewpoint as regards the future. If I look into my crystal ball, the next big change that I honestly think and hope that will be a culmination of our collective efforts, perhaps you'll be surprised to hear this, I think it's a change in perception of the contracting process itself, where rather than being viewed as legal documents and that it's a process that is a source of frustration, confrontation, delay, both by, let me say, internal and external stakeholders, that perception begins to change, that the contracts themselves are increasingly viewed as strategic business assets, and that the contracting process itself, you know, starts to become a calling card for the overall business, you know, as being demonstrative of collaboration, both internally and externally. Perhaps it's a somewhat naive, glasses half full kind of viewpoint of the future, but I do think that that's where we're hopefully heading. Craig?
No, I think that sounds good. I mean, I think to that extent, sort of more tactically, right? I think you'll see, you know, companies are creating global contracting offices, right? You know, that it's some sort of, you know, it's the hybrid of procurement, commercial, and legal. Let's take all these, you know, disparate areas and make one stream that has its own value chain to it, right? That, you know, look, because legal departments have to care about, you know, disputes, IP, all sorts of other things, right? You know, procurement has to care about lots of different things as well. But there's this steady stream. Let's sort of consolidate that and put a value on it. That's happening organizationally more and more. I think also from the technology standpoint, you're seeing this become, you know, there's some big tools out there that are enterprise quality, you know, CLM technologies out there. And I think you're going to see some of the tools that were enterprise tools become CLM tools as well. They're going to, whether it's through acquisition or development of their own, right? Whether it's in CRM or SRM, those tools are getting into the space because they realize that value that Mark was talking about. So I think 5 years, lots more enterprise technology and enterprise teams in this space.
Fantastic. Well, I could talk to you about this forever, but we have to stop there. But thank you very much. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Craig. And I hope to speak to you soon about this. Take care.
Thanks so much. Be well.
Thank you.